What's often missing from those conversations is what are the impacts on actual people who are using this technology or whose lives are being displaced by this technology. What is the function of this AI? Why are people creating it? Who is funding it? And what do they want the world to look like? And then how do you, as the consumer, want the world to look like? Hi, I'm Sophie Wang. I am a zine artist, an artist in other forms, and an educator. I'm currently based here in Minneapolis, but I grew up in and lived in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles area, for most of my life, and I'm here as a speaker today at Data for Public Good. I'm here to talk about exposing algorithmic ecologies and the algorithmic ecology as a framework and a tool for community resistance against harmful programs and algorithms. Yeah, so the algorithmic ecology is a framework and a tool that we developed at Stop LAPD Spying Coalition and Free Radicals, so in collaboration through a shared working group that was the Data and Algorithms Working Group. And the algorithmic ecology is basically a 4-part framework that helps you map your fight against a particular algorithm or program that is causing harm in a community, or that you just want to have more context for. And so it started out with mapping the fight against a predictive policing program called PredPol, which is really central to kind of the story of the development of the framework. And the framework itself has 4 parts. So there's the community impact, which is kind of the first layer at the bottom. And then there is the operational layer, which is the algorithm itself or the program, the software, and then whoever is using or implementing it. And then the layer on top of that is the institutional layer. So that's things like, who are the institutions that were involved in the creation of this algorithm? What are the institutions that funded the creation of it, that made it possible for it to be implemented? So in the PredPol case, just to talk about kind of those layers, we were starting with a community based in Skid Row, but also more broadly Black and brown communities in Los Angeles. So talking about the impact on those communities, which include displacement, banishment, gentrification of communities, thinking about the ways that it exacerbates redlining. And then on the second layer, so operationalizing it, the police, LAPD, use this program called PredPol to put data into it to create these 500 by 500 feet squares that are called hotspots. And then those hotspots are places where they are predicting more crime will happen, and they'll send more police officers out to those areas. And then the layer on top of it, the institutional layer, helps us contextualize, okay, if we are thinking about PredPol within its context, why was it created? Is it just here to find crime or to deploy police officers? No, we find that in an actual historical and institutional context, it's developed also to gentrify Los Angeles and quarantine the Skid Row area. So who are the academics who are involved in the creation of it, who are the city hall members who are involved in the implementation of it within LA beyond just the LA Police Department, and who are kind of the nonprofits also who are taking money to put a rubber stamp of approval on this program. So those are kind of the first 3 layers, and then the final 4th layer is the ideological layer. So what are the values at play that connect to all of these different parts of the ecology? And what we really find is that this helps us understand that all of these campaigns and all of these fights are really at their core abolitionist, because it's not just about removing one program and making it possible for that harm to be disappeared. Because it's an ecology, it functions like any ecosystem, where if you remove just one thing out of it, ecosystems are resilient. They will fill that niche in with something else, which we are seeing in LA as PredPol has been discontinued. The LAPD has simply replaced it with data-informed, community-focused policing and other forms of data-informed policing. And so we really are seeing that that ecology is resilient. In order to remove that harm, you need to tackle and address all of the different parts of the ecosystem. And also that creates more targets for a campaign, for a fight, more ways for people to get involved, more areas for expertise to be relevant. And so really we create this algorithmic ecology as both a way to map a fight, but also as a way to communicate what you're trying to do with your campaign in kind of a visual diagram. Yeah, so there's this quote from an LAPD spokesperson that goes talking about kind of predictive policing, and he says, "It's math, not magic. It can't be racist." And that's one of the things and one of the reasons that we as Free Radicals, which is an activist collective I'm a part of at the intersection of science and social justice, got involved in this fight is because of this use of this rhetoric of science and technology as objective or as value neutral. And we really, really, really push against that, right? Because all of these things, this technology and this use of data is being used to say that things are objective when, of course, why is that data being collected? Who is making the decisions to collect this data? Who is that data being shared with? And then what are the outcomes of that data being put into use in certain ways, for example, in a predictive policing system? And so I think really what we want to push against is this idea that any kind of data or any kind of algorithm is neutral. All of these algorithms are not only not neutral in the way that they function, right? I think oftentimes we hear this narrative of dirty data in, dirty data out, which is very true, right? So like if you're using historically racist or biased data, so like crime data, for example, and you put it into a system that's going to tell you where crime is going to happen, it's going to spit out an equally racist outcome. And that's something that we hear often, and it creates this ratchet effect of, okay, then we're going to deploy police more into one area, and then, of course, if there's more police there, then they're going to find more crime there, et cetera, et cetera. But what the algorithmic ecology really shows is that it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond just dirty data in, dirty data out, crime leading to more deployment, leading to more finding of crime. It really says, okay, well, you know, even if you could create a neutral data set, what is this algorithm here to do? This algorithm is here to find crime. This algorithm is here to create a class of people who have been disenfranchised and can be exploited, and their labor can be exploited. And they can be removed from a certain area so that that area's property and land can be taken by people who are going to use it for profit. And so at the end of the day, it's not just, about debiasing the algorithm or about making the data that goes in less racist so that the data that comes out less racist, but really thinking about what is this program or this algorithm? Why does it function the way that it does? And do we want that function to exist at all? So I first got involved with the campaign against PredPol that the algorithmic ecology framework and diagram kind of came out of because I am from LA, or I guess if you're from LA, I'm from the Inland Empire, I'm from LA County, but for people who aren't from LA, I'm from LA, for me, and I did live in LA City proper while I was involved in this, but for me, it was always very important that the work that I was doing was local, and that kind of the work that I was doing with Free Radicals at the time, which was a lot of public education, political education around the politics of science and technology, that it be grounded and also useful and generative in a local context. And so for me, it was really about, I am in community with these people around me. And so I need to understand the ways that what I'm talking about is actually being like operationalized in some ways in my communities so that I can be part of fighting against this harm, so that we can all, because we're all so deeply interconnected, be a part of creating something that's better, a world that's better. You know, I have friends who are public high school teachers in Los Angeles, and their lives are directly affected by their students' lives, and also, of course, by like administration and by like city decisions, including funding, which are impacted by things like how much funding goes to policing. And then their students are directly impacted by that funding that goes to the police, and then what the police actions are. And so all of the people that I'm in community with are deeply impacted by all of these things. And that's always really important to me, is to be there for them. I think one of the main things that I want people to walk away from this workshop or from what I'm sharing is that it's always important to look beyond just the program or just the software or just the algorithm or just the technology. It's always important to ask, why does this technology exist? Who makes it possible for this technology to exist? Who benefits from it and who is harmed by it? Because just starting with, how can I fix this technology to make it less racist or sexist or less biased? The real answer and the root answer to that is never going to be within the actual technology itself. It's always going to be somewhere in the larger ecosystem of that technology. Yeah, so I think we're seeing like a real burgeoning of the use of AI in various forms, machine learning or large language models, or even like simple algorithmic automation of different things. And one of the things that's often present in those conversations is like who's benefiting and who's being harmed by these technologies. But what's often missing from those conversations is, what are the impacts on actual people who are using this technology or whose lives are being displaced by this technology? So one of the things that I worked on last summer was with a professor in Orange County in California, and we worked on a story that had to do with longshore workers at the Port of Los Angeles being displaced by AI and automation. And this is not a new story, but it's something that as AI is developing more and more and being part of the conversation, I'm constantly getting ads about AI integration in like apps that I currently use, or ads for new forms of AI that I can implement into my daily workflow or my life. And as this becomes a larger and larger industry, I think it's very important for people not just to think about like, oh, what's the danger of using AI in my life and maybe it being inaccurate or something like that, which is, a huge concern. But beyond that, what is the function of this AI? Why are people creating it? Who is funding it? And what do they want the world to look like? And then how do you, as the consumer, want the world to look like? What do I want the world to look like? I think an action that folks who are listening to this can take is to just find out what's happening in your local communities. I think that's a very easy answer, but I think it's something that is also kind of hard to do. And so I would encourage folks to think about getting involved, reaching out to local organizations that are doing work already that is relevant to your life. And then also, I think one of the things that's important too is to just take this lens to all of the things that you encounter and to ask questions about those things and not take it for granted that anything is just neutral. That's, I think, the hardest question. I think a better world is just one where all of the things that my friends who are working in like these kinds of communities, like for example, as educators, all of the things that make it impossible for them to do their jobs, all of the funding that goes into those things goes instead into like equipping people to be able to do things in relationship with each other. So for example, one of the things we've talked about a lot at the conference already are different forms of surveillance technologies. So what would it look like if instead of putting in like vape detection and shot spotter and spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on those technologies, you spent that on making it so teachers didn't have to spend their own money in classrooms to buy school supplies, or to make it so that there are more teachers in schools so that classrooms aren't like 40 kids, or make it so that doctors actually have access to enough time to spend with each patient, things like that. Yeah, so first, I would like to plug Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I think the research and also the work that they're doing based in Skid Row out of LA Community Action Network is so vital, and also part of a long history of work that they've been doing since 2010, and then also even far beyond that. And so you can go find them. I think they're just at Stop LAPD Spying on Instagram and Twitter/X. Or you can find them at their website, which I think is www.stoplapdspying.org. I think it's .org. And then if you're interested in reading a little bit more about free radicals, we've been on a bit of a hiatus since about 2021, but there's still a lot of content on the blog, and that's just at freerads.org. And I think I'll probably just leave it there at the 2 org plugs, and yeah, if folks want to reach out to me, I won't plug like my own personal stuff, since this is really coming out of the work that we did as these 2 collectives. That's a really great question. I think my inspiration for a better future comes from the fact that, like, when I look outside, I can see trees, and the earth around us is so beautiful, and I want to be able to experience that for myself as I grow older, and then also for future generations to be able to experience like the beauty and joy of the world around us and the relationships that we have with each other. And that's not possible when people are being deeply exploited by capitalism, or like placed into carceral systems, or like we're experiencing climate change at unprecedented levels. And so I think that's what really drives me forward, is just like a deep appreciation and joy of the world and the people around me.